So that was primarily an example of octave chords. I, as a young lad, I got to call them Corgan chords because it always reminded me of a lot of the lead parts that Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkin would use. And he's by no means the one that invented it. I mean, it's been around forever, but him and a lot of bands in the 90s really sort of popularized that as a way of doing simple but effective high-gain leads that could really push and drive the song. And as time went on, especially in the 2000s, you know, you had bands like Thrice or My Chemical Romance, like a lot of new metal, a lot of alt rock. I mean, and it wasn't, and of course it's really not exclusive to anything because it's a very powerful yet simple tool that's in most guitarists' toolboxes. And I think a lot of people, I'm surprised at how many guitarists actually kind of skip over this one or don't really see it for all the potential that it has. I mean, honestly, I think next to power chords, this should be, like, when you're talking like power chords or scales, whatever, like, I think this should be number 2 because I think it's a really good way to introduce you to using scales, to doing solos, and it's a really good way to get your ear trained for identifying the scale, the key that stuff is in, and, you know, it's just fun. It's fun to play, and it's fun to, like it's one of these things that's like power chords, you know. If you just learn how to do, like, you know, most guitarists can start off with something like that, and then you say, okay, that's an open E, so, you know, even just holding it adds a texture and adds a layer. I mean, and that's just, you know, me just messing around off the top of my dome, but you can see, like, how much texture that adds to whatever you're playing. So I guess I'll show you how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, easiest way for me, the easiest string to learn on, I think, is the open A. It kind of gives the most clarity, the most texture, I think. So pick whatever note you want to do. I'll say E. So E on the A string, 7th fret, first finger down, and 3rd or 4th, doesn't matter, whatever you're most comfortable with. I do it with 4 a lot of times. Just the 7th fret then up on the G, so just skip a string up and go to that. Similar to doing it's like if you know how to do a power chord, you can do this because you're just going to move that finger up. The tricky part, I think, when you first learning how to do these for the beginners is how to mute, how to play, so you're only hitting those 2 notes, so you're not going, you know, like that, and how to really just get that kind of, you know, like I said, it's the Corgan chord right there. It's sort of a natural touch feel thing you got to get used to, but overall, it's just lazy fingering. Like, if you just really focus on getting that one clear and this one clear, and just kind of let your hand just be lazy. And then a little trick to make sure this E string doesn't ring out if you don't want it to is you just kind of dangle your middle finger there. You just let it kind of just sit on that to mute it. Otherwise, one of the most fun way to do this is, of course, with an open string below it. So E is huge, and this is great. You're able to establish a key really easy. So if you want to do this in major, you know, you just go by ear. So, you know, if you're major, all right, go a whole step up. And if you want to go to minor, just do another little half step to that 8, or sorry, to that 10. So 7, 9, 10 will give you a little minor walk there. Or go 7, 9, 11 is major, and it's so one of the ways to use this as a writing tool like that, if you have a loop pedal where you're able to record, you know, just pattern like that. So now that you know this is an E major, and this is outlining a bit of a rhythm and a bit of a pattern or whatever, you can just experiment. You can start it with the open E. That sounds. You want to go a little bit more emo. And just right there, like that is something that. And it sounds, and it doesn't need to be, like it was back in the day with it. It can be if you want it. I mean, that stuff is really fun to play too. My timing's off, but like you can really hear that, like see, I mean right there, it's like I can't help but want to keep to keep messing around with it. Another way you can use this is to just arpeggiate it. You just go. And that's a very, like, it doesn't need to be such an overpowering elemental aspect of it. It can just be. It's great. It's a lot of fun. It works really well, especially if you're a looper, like you like to use loop pedals or whatever, or you're trying to add texture. Let's change keys around a little bit. Let's do D. And this is a really great one. Like I said, it sounds really good with that low one. So let's go ahead and drop it to D real quick. I'm just establishing it as a rhythm. And what happens when you do something like this is like your ear doesn't wear out as much from something like that as if you were to do like a lead bit, like a. Something like that is cool, but if you're looking for something to establish a pattern you're going to play over and over, it needs to be something that kind of falls into the back of your ear. That's always there, but isn't going to drill into your head. So I am a ear player primarily, but for someone like me, this was very helpful for me getting into my ear of, is this a major key? Is this a minor key? What sounds good? Because you're always a half a step away, from the right note. So let me go ahead and establish just a chord pattern again. Let's go to, I'm in D, so let's stick with the D. If you just hang on this D, you're safe. So Now you want to venture up a little bit, so just go up a step. And you're like, okay, but I need to go further. So if you hear that, just keep moving. In fact, it can sound kind of cool to do a little slidey things. Before you know it, you're picking up the patterns. And then these octave jumps are really fun to do. So it's like, do little bends there, and all I'm doing there is I'm just doing some vibrato and just pulling hard on this. Just really yank it. Learning it on the A string first is usually the easiest. It seems to be how most songs are done with it. Now, if you want to do it on the string above it, it's a little bit more difficult because rather than that standard power chord shape, right there, you now have to move your third or your fourth finger up a half a step in order to keep it an octave. Otherwise, it'll just be a seventh, which, of course, can sound cool. But it's not what you're looking for this example, so it's... and that's a much brighter, much tinier sound. You can add the, that's something that's a real good thing if you want to do some funky stuff or some really rhythmic stuff, or that's a very good little lead thing you can do. And then you can also do it on the low E string. Now it's going to have a lot thicker tone. It's going to be a lot more round, a lot more warm. And this is something that you can actually do in lieu of power chords. If you want it to sound a little bit more open, maybe you want to leave a little bit more room for a bass or a keyboard or vocals or something, or just, rather than just being that's the power chord we all know and love. So if you want to do it on the low E, it's going to give it a lot more of a warm, full tone. I mean, we get used to the sound of power chords. Nothing wrong with them. We know and love them, but it's maybe you're writing a song and you're like, I do. And you're like, I don't know, I just want it to sound a little bit, maybe a little bit cleaner sounding or a little bit more open. If you wrote a song, for instance, say, and it doesn't change chords between the chorus and the verse. So let's say your chorus is, and you're like, well, I don't really want to change the chords for the verse, but I want it to not be as same as the chorus, then cool, then just go. And this is something you see bands like Blink-182 and stuff do all the time. This can sound really good along with a bass, but and it's rather than have you play all of those notes, it's just spread the love around in the mix a little bit. In modern music and stuff, this can make it sound, it's this is stuff we've heard in all these songs and bands that we know and loved, or more specifically, we knew and loved back in high school, and it's can be a bit of a turn-off for new players or the people listening, because it can make your song sound dated, which can be good if that's what you want it to be. If you're I really want to capture that new metal or that old emo or that old alternative sound, it's great. If not, it's like, then just kind of think about more of what you can do with it. You know, it doesn't have to be this strong, overdriven thing. I would also say this: if you're someone that likes to play by feel, like, and that's usually where I am at, where it's like I'm not so much a shredder, but I like really getting into it. Like, this can be, you know, a really powerful tool to just hammer on it, like, because you can hammer and you can bend and tremolo, and you know, there's so much you can do by not even knowing the scale, really. So right now, I'm just going to jam around. I'm just going to, you know, come up with stuff and try to implement different versions of this technique so you can kind of see all the different possibilities with it. Okay. Anyways, thanks for watching.